Good evening and welcome to Warrior TV, the voice of the mental health warriors. And we're going to have an awesome evening's chat with you just in a few moments. Good evening and welcome to Warrior TV. I'm Kerry Duval, the Human GPS, and I'm coming to you live with the mental health warrior's wife, Kerry Duval, and the lovely unrue. Good evening.
Hello.
Welcome. Now, I've been a bit thrown in at the deep end with this one, so let's see how we get on.
We'll swim with you.
Okay then, thank you.
You'll be fine.
It's always good. We're always good. How are we?
Yeah. I'm all right.
Yep. Doing okay. Thanks.
Ready to go.
Ready to go. That's all good. So this evening's conversation is, I know when we talked about it before, we mentioned domestic violence, but I think if we refer to it as domestic abuse, perhaps, because violence, the physical side of abuse is only a part of it, isn't it?
Yes. Sadly.
You know.
Yeah, it is.
I think we can. I know, Karen, you were talking about it just before we came live. I've been on the receiving end of domestic abuse. Kerry, how about you?
Yes, my previous relationship before Adam.
Yeah. So we are all experienced with the domestic abuse side of things, being on the receiving end of it. And I think it's prudent to point out, in fact, it's very important to point out that it doesn't just happen in heterosexual relationships. I hate labels, but we'll call it that for ease of things. And it's not always from men either.
No,
women are as capable and do. And I unfortunately know a few men that have been on the receiving end of it from their ex-female partners. So I think it's important for people to realise that it is from both sides. You know, it's men and women. It's not just with from men. There was a word I was thinking of then, and it's gone completely. It's not.
1 second, Kerry. My cat's meowing.
Yes, it's not a. It doesn't matter which gender you are. It's about the person you are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cats.
Karen, tell us a little bit about your experiences, if that's okay.
Yes, sure. I actually met my ex-husband. He was an American based at an Air Force base near where I lived. And I was enamored of the uniform more than anything. But back in the 70s, you know, America was everything. And he seemed super. He was big banging. He was a Southern boy, you know, and he knew how to woo a lady, and he knew how to woo my mama, and he was just charming as charm himself. And I thought I was marrying somebody that really cherished me. But it turned out that basically he was a narcissist. And once he had got the thing he went after, me, he then, from then on, well, we went back to live in America. So I was, again, isolated, far from family, which is quite often what narcissists like to do. And at first it was the slow drip to where, you know, you put a lobster in warm water and slowly turn up the heat. You don't plonk it into boiling water. So I was totally unused to any concept of domestic violence from my past. And gradually, as the heat got turned up and he became verbally and emotionally nasty, I fell straight as a youngster. I fell straight into the battered wife syndrome of believing, well, I must deserve this. It's because that's the emotional state they get you in. And so by the time he was pushing me around and putting his fist in my face and saying what he said, and later the violence, by then I was already conditioned to think it was what I deserved, you know. So that was my experience. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, how those of us on the receiving end of it start to think and start to believe. Kerry, you mentioned that you'd experienced abuse in a previous relationship. Give us a bit more information about that, if you don't mind.
Well, I met him. I was in my teenage years when I met him, and to start off, he was absolutely brilliant. But aren't they all? And then he went into the army, and when he came back from his basic training, that's when the problems started. He'd get jealous if I didn't answer my phone to him. He'd get jealous if I didn't answer my text messages to him. He'd always want to know who I was with, what I was doing, when I would go home, when I was seeing him next. He made me feel like my world had to revolve around him and just him. And I wasn't allowed to have my own life, my own friends, basically. He was a right horrible person. I'm not going to swear. And after a year, just over a year, I'd lost my granddad. And the final straw was he accused me of lying about my granddad dying, that I was off sleeping with somebody else. And that was the final straw. I stood up to him and ended the relationship there and then.
Good for you. Good for you. It's I find it very curious what goes through their minds as well. You know, what exactly are they thinking, and why are they thinking this? It's very difficult to understand where they are actually coming from, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know?
I know in my ex-husband's case, as I got to know his mother, it became very clear where he comes from. And I'm not saying that all narcissists are nurture over nature. I think nature takes a part as well, but I think a lot of it is to do with nurture. And my ex-husband had a real love-hate relationship with his mom, and he basically brought that into our relationship, and it was all about control and making me submissive. As you say, though, it's bizarre to think, well, what can he be getting out of this? You know, if somebody's looking for love and looking for intimacy, surely this is the wrong way of pursuing it. As you say, it's quite bizarre.
Yeah. You would think, wouldn't you?
You would think, yes.
Yeah, very, very strange. Adam's put quite a good question, and that is, what's the difference between domestic abuse within relationships to domestic abuse within families?
I would say in relationships, it's very much one person has control, the other person has to basically obey what the other person is saying. And then in a family, it's when, well, it's a similar thing, but it's not partners, it's a parent, a sibling, and you have to basically they tell you how to live your life. So I think it's who it is that's doing the controlling, whether it's a partner or whether it's your mum, your dad, whatever. That's just my opinion.
And I think also domestic violence may not be actually actively done towards the children. Often it is, but they will be abused, if you like, by proxy. Their trauma comes from witnessing or hearing what's going on.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I mean, I think that's the main difference between domestic abuse within families and the domestic abuse between two people in a relationship. It's pretty much the same thing. It's just that it affects different people. And as you rightly say, Karen, kids, especially if they're hearing it too, it's affecting them by proxy. I mean, I said before as well that it's not just men that dish out the abuse. Women do it as well. I have experience of that, being on the receiving end of it. And it is very much the majority of that was emotional and it was mental abuse.
Was this a parent?
No. I was in a relationship with this person.
Right.
And as I say, it was mainly emotional and mental abuse, and occasionally, very occasionally, there'd be a little bit of physical abuse thrown in for good measure, But I think the difference with me was the fact that as much as it hurt, as much as it upset me, I knew that it was wrong. And I knew that I didn't deserve what I was receiving. And me being me and being very strong-willed, strong-minded, fought back, not physically. I as much as I wanted to on occasions, I knew that it wasn't right. So I managed to restrain myself from doing that. But I would argue, I would say, why? This isn't right. What exactly have I done to deserve this? But like you were saying, Kerry, it's also a case of, your time that you would spend with the rest of your family and your friends suddenly reduces.
Yeah.
And if you're not answering the phone, why aren't you answering the phone? I'm phoning you. You should be answering. Or it's constant texts,
Yeah.
So but again, as I say, women can do it and they can do it towards men.
Yeah.
So, it happens right the way across the spectrum. It doesn't matter what the relationship is. It happens. And it happens from both men and women.
Yeah. I mean, I personally know of a relationship where it's the woman doing the controlling and the abusing, and he's obviously on the victim side of it. And obviously, we've got some evidence, and we've said to him, we'll help you, but obviously, ultimately, it is down to he has to find the strength to walk away from that relationship.
Yeah. And obviously, when two people get together, regardless of their gender, because I've been in lesbian relationships where there's been a controlling issue or whatever. It's never to do with the other person. It's to do with the baggage that person brings into the relationship.
Yeah.
And at some point this evening, I'd love to, when you feel it's right, Kerry B, to talk about something I call the tilted room, the dynamic that happens between that couple. But about you.
I'm more than happy for you to talk about that at any point, Karen, honestly.
Should I bring it up now? Are you all right with that?
Go on then, yeah.
Kerry
Yeah,
D?
yeah, absolutely.
I should be called Kerry. This is very confusing. It's like that Monty Python skit. Do you remember it when all these Australians were sitting around and they were all called Bruce, and this guy joins them and they're going, hello, this is Bruce, 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 and he goes, and your name is? And he says, Steve. Goes, no, that's confusing. We'll call you Bruce. But
I'm gonna have to. I do remember it, but it was a long time ago.
No, at one point, we were in college, me and Adam were in college, and I walked into a room one day and I shouted Adam, and 7 of them looked at me and I'm like, whoa, there were 7 Adams, and I'm like, nope. No, I walked out.
Would you leave it?
I was going to say, whilst we're on the subject, I think we had the conversation the other day, didn't we, Kerry, about the name Kerry. When I was growing up, the only other Kerry I knew was a cousin of mine. I didn't know any other Kerrys, and now all of a sudden, with the networking that I do and the people I'm connected with, I know loads.
Yeah.
Oh, I went through school with one other Kerry. So.
Anyway, Karen, over to you.
Well, we are the KKK.
Okay.
Yeah, the tilted room. So the way I sort of explained to myself as I tried to come to terms with what I'd been through after I left my marriage, and why it was that I had such low self-esteem as a result. In fact, I wrote a poem which was something about, you took everything with you, but you also took my self-esteem. Couldn't you have left my self-esteem? But so I came up with this idea of the tilted room, which is, even though he never did this in actuality, it was as if he had taken me to a room in the house, opened the door and said, "Hey, look, Karen, this room is tilted." And I'd be like, no, it's not. It's perfectly fine. And I was allowed to get away with that. But the next time he might take me to that room and open the door and say, "Look, this room is tilted." I'd go, "What? This room isn't tilted. What are you on about?" I'd get away with it again. But then on the third time, say, that I would look, he'd take me to that room, open the door and say, "Look, this room is tilted." I'd be like, "Come on, this is ridiculous. This room is not tilted." And then it would be, if I say it's tilted, it's effing tilted, right? And the anger would begin to come. And so because you now fear what they're saying, you then find yourself, in order to make the room tilted, in order to see things as he sees things, in order to take on his perspective so that you don't incur his anger, you then, or her anger, you then drop to one knee, twist your head and go, "Oh yeah, this room's tilted. Sorry, I see it now." And so basically what you've done, in order to no longer be causing irritation or anger and being at the butt of his bad behavior, you contort yourself, and your view of yourself, your view of the world, everything changes, because it has to be from the way they see it so that you don't get the backlash. And then the act, when you leave, recovery is the act of straightening back up and seeing things from a healthy perspective, which takes time.
Yeah.
Did you find that?
Yeah. When I was with him, it was very much, I had to change my opinions to suit him. So if I didn't like something and he didn't like it, he didn't like the fact that I disagreed with him, he would let me get away with it like you did, or he'd do this thing at the back of my neck that absolutely irritated me, and it would get harder and harder until I started agreeing with him. Yeah.
Yeah, as I say, I think my recollection of that time was because I've always been very strong-willed, and I was convinced that I wasn't doing anything wrong. So of course I would fight back. I'd stand my ground is probably the correct way of putting it. I'd stand my ground.
Yes.
And I'd stand up for myself, and I'd get accused of all sorts of things like back chatting, and I was I was almost treated like a child, a naughty petulant child, But even doing what I was told to do, towing the line, so to speak, it made no difference. You know, just occasionally it was, you know, there was that glimmer of hope, that little bit of niceness was coming through.
Yeah.
Like dangling that carrot, isn't it?
Yeah.
Miles away. And then
it keeps staying.
My own ridiculous feelings, I suppose, you know, and this ridiculous belief that it would actually change and get better.
Yeah.
You know, that the person that I knew in the first place would come back.
Yeah.
And of course it never happened. No. However, through my stubbornness and refusal to quit and leave, the whole thing kind of built up and up and up and up and up until eventually I had a nervous breakdown.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
That happened in my marriage.
I think these things do happen. I look back at all of that time now, and whilst it wasn't pleasant, whilst it was actually happening, I look back at it now and I'm actually grateful for it, for the experience, because of the lessons that I've learned from that experience.
Exactly.
And it gave me that push, if you like, to really go for what I wanted in life and to follow my passion, follow my desire, which is obviously helping others. And the odd thing was that for years and years and years, I knew what I wanted to do, but I kept saying, no, I need more life experience yet. Little did I know what that experience was going to be.
Well, they often say, you know, if the gods wish to punish you, they give you the thing you want.
Well, that's it. Was it be careful what you wish for?
Yes.
I didn't wish for that. I honestly didn't wish for that, but I just believed that I needed more experience.
Yeah. No, well, Karen's obviously phase is we have to go through shit to grow.
Yes.
So we've been through shit and we've grown.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, can I ask, Karen, how long did it take you, once you'd left that environment, how long did it take you to sort of get back to being you?
Oh, gosh. I remember when I left, because I had to flee America with my 2-year-old son while my husband's family, who were West Virginia hillbillies, were pursuing me with weaponry and rang my parents to tell them they'd shot me. And it took them 24 hours to find out I was still alive. So it was a very traumatic exit, as well as a very traumatic 9.5 years. So when I first arrived back in England and I wanted to re-enter the womb, so my mother sat a long time with her legs crossed. I wanted to start again. And I said to her, look, I just don't know how to live anymore. You know, I felt like, for a start, because of all the control, I felt like a puppet with its strings cut. And also because I remember saying to my first counsellor years afterwards, because I didn't believe I needed counselling, I didn't see myself as a battered wife. I saw myself as a failed wife because I'd taken on board so much of his conditioning. But I remember saying to my counsellor, I said, for the last 9.5 years, the only thing that's made me feel good about myself is when my husband has made me feel shit about myself, eventually he would say, it's okay, I forgive you, even though I hadn't done anything. You're all right. And I said, no one's going to say, I'm never going to hear him say that again. So I have to learn how to soothe me without that external validation. So it took me years. In some respects, and I mean this lightheartedly, but also it's true, in some respects, still nearly 40 years on, I'm still recovering. And I think I'll be recovering until, you know, I hit the dirt. But for the most part, to answer your question, I I would say it took me a good 6-7 years of hard work to fully get back into the Karen that I recognized.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's destroyed. I mean, it burnt my house down. It destroyed my self-esteem completely, my sense of self-worth. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And how about you, Kerry? How was it for you once you left that relationship? I mean, it sounded like from the way you've described your exit that it was rather rapid. So
Yeah.
how did you move on from that?
Well, obviously at the time, I'd lost my granddad, and I sort of had to pick myself up from losing my granddad and from coming out of that relationship. I sort of went through about a week of feeling really, really rubbish, and then I started to feel like, right, this isn't me. I need to get back to me, and that's obviously I used my friends around me to help me. Obviously, I had like a big circle of female friends anyway, so I sort of stuck with them and pushed all the men out of my life. And then a few weeks later, I met Adam, and
that
one of
ruined
the first
everything.
One of the first things I did with Adam. One of the first things I did with Adam was I sat him down. And I spilled everything out to him and told him everything that had happened with my previous relationship, thinking that he'd walk away. You know, and I told him that obviously I was still sorting myself out, and obviously because it was still early days, I just thought he's definitely going to walk away, but he didn't. He said, right, okay, he's going to help me, and he did. And having that shoulder and that completely opposite person to my previous partner around me and treat me like a girl should be treated in a relationship, it showed me that not all men out there are horrible pigs. There are a few princes among the frogs, shall we say.
I think that's the thing, because when you've had that real bad experience, because it's stripped a part of you away as well, it can leave you with that impression, that element of finding it very difficult to trust another person that you may be interested in getting involved with. I think that's possibly the biggest issue is the trust, because you can take the time, can't you, to rebuild yourself, to work out who you are and what you want from life and another relationship potentially. But it's being able to trust somebody else again.
Yeah,
because it's not just with your innermost thoughts. It's not just trusting them with your car, with your belongings or anything else. It's trusting them with your life, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
It does take a lot. Oh, go on, Karen.
Sorry, I can. I'll be quick. I can remember specifically the first time I was around somebody that I fancied again. Good 5 years later, and as they were talking to me and being lovely and engaging me in conversation, at one point in the middle of the conversation, it was as if part of me left me, stood next to me. I'm using an analogy. It didn't really happen, but and while this one side of me is listening and nodding and laughing and smiling, the other side was going, what capacity do you have to hurt me? Underneath that lovely outside, what are you really like? And I mean, for me, my trust in men, I have great male friends, but I could never again trust a man with my emotional well-being.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Oh.
Interesting. It's that is interesting. That's an interesting comment to make, actually, Karen. Because you're saying that you could never trust another man again with your emotional well-being, yet you've trusted other people with your emotional well-being.
Yeah, women. Yeah.
Well,
it's interesting because, just briefly, because this isn't the subject of the evening, but if I was to look back at my growing up, I grew up in a very conservative Christian family. But if I look back, I would say if I'd grown up in a liberal family, I would have been bisexual. But that wasn't, I was nuts about the Bionic Woman, and I had Robert Redford on my wall, I was a bit confused. And anyway, so, but because there was no thought of being allowed to be in relationship with a woman, I just went down the man route. So I can remember specifically within our marriage, about 3 or 4 years in, I was already deeply wounded and damaged. And I, for want of a better word, fell in love with a friend, a female. And I was able to, nothing happened. She was married too, but I completely shifted my emotional self, if you like, into the warmth of that female friendship.
Yeah.
And it went from there. And so I think I was definitely bisexual. So I don't think a bad marriage turns you gay by any means. Otherwise, you wouldn't get women with so many bad marriages behind them. So it was just that it allowed me to explore the other side because that conduit was shut off.
Yeah, I think that's a whole other conversation, isn't it?
It is, yes.
I do find it very, very curious. Similar experiences, I guess. But we can talk about that another time. So I think I want to ask Kerry, what advice would you give to somebody? What advice would you give to somebody that's actually in an abusive relationship at the moment?
I would say that the abuse isn't your fault. It's everything to do with them, the way that they were raised or the problems that they've got. It's nothing that you're doing is making them be that way. They're choosing to be that way. And it's the circle abuse thing. It's, you might wish that, that the bloke that you're with might be absolutely fantastic when he's on his good days, but then when he's not so good days, he's right horrible bastard. And you can't wish for those good days to come. You've got to find that courage to say, no, enough. I've had enough. I don't deserve to be treated like this. You deserve to be treated so much better. And there is a saying that when one bloke's treating you bad, there's 10 blokes that are ready to treat you like a princess. Go and find one of those blokes.
Wicked. Yeah. It is very much about being in the right frame of mind, in the right mindset, acknowledging that it's not right and that life has to change.
Yeah, that you deserve better.
Yeah, it's being acknowledging that yourself when you're in that situation, to be able to move away from it, essentially, is what happened with me. I woke up one morning and I thought, I can't carry on living like this. I don't want to live like this anymore. So I decided that I kind of realised that the only way my life was going to change was if I changed it. I wasn't sure how it was going to change, but I didn't have long to wait. I had the opportunity to relocate with a company I was working for at the time, And then a few months later, I was moving from one end of the country to the other.
Yeah.
And I've never looked back. Never looked back. So
I think sorry.
No, go on.
Yeah, and it's about like if you've got other people around you that are willing to help you move to a different town, or even to a different part of the country to help start your life again. I think that is so important. Just speaking to people around you and saying that the relationship I'm in now isn't where I want to be. I want to obviously do something to get away from it, and you can get away. There's ways and means to get away, and there's so much help out there.
There absolutely is. Yeah, you're right. But again, it's like I said before, the person that's in the thick of it has got to be at that point of acknowledging what's going on, acknowledging that it doesn't have to be like this, and is ready to move on and away from that damaging environment. So mine came in the opportunity of relocating with work, of all things. So it was easy in that respect.
I think that's why so many people stay in relationships, because they're worried. Yeah, I want to go, but I don't know how to go and what my life's going to be like when I have gone. They're worried about the unknown, and it's like, step into that unknown, because sometimes that unknown, when you hit rock bottom, when you rebuild your life, it's so much better on the other side.
I was going to say, there is always going to be somebody or a few people that are like, come on, it's going to be absolutely fine. Trust us, we'll help. Karen, what advice would you give to somebody who's rebuilding after coming away from that kind of an environment?
Oh, God, that's a good question. I would, first of all, advise not to jump into another relationship. Because while we're still looking for external validation to feel good about ourselves, then we're more likely to end up in a bad relationship again, because sorry to say, but these kind of sharks that swim through the waters smell blood. And if they see a fragile person, in need of validation, with low self-esteem, then I'm afraid it attracts the wrong kind of person. I think it's important to realize I've got to work on myself. I've got to find myself again. Or in my case as well, I've got to now raise my son. He needs a mom more than I need to be part of a relationship. And to take time to heal. I think it's very easy to underestimate when you've been abused. For instance, I didn't believe I was deserving of being called an abused wife when I left, because I'd never been taken to the A&E with, a broken cheekbone or a broken arm, or, any outward physical wounds. And it's very easy for us to compare with other people and go, well, that's a battered wife. She's been to the ER several times, or the police have been round. No, nobody else knew what was going on inside, behind my closed doors. And to acknowledge to yourself, actually, the verbal, emotional, and mental abuse that I have received is as damaging as any, physical punch I might have had. It's far too easy to underestimate and to think to yourself, well, I should be over this by now. Mrs. So-and-so, she left her husband and 3 years later, she's in a lovely marriage. What's wrong with me that I can't move on, or whatever? It's different for everybody. And I would say, seek out a trauma-informed therapist, and be validated by your therapist, if you like, that what you've been through is traumatic, and let's begin a journey of putting you back together, rather than thinking I must jump into another relationship.
I think that's really good advice, and you're absolutely right. It's that old saying, isn't it? Sticks and stones may break my bones, but the scars will heal. Those physical scars will heal. The bruises will disappear.
Yeah.
I mean, at one point, and this was after I'd had the nervous breakdown, once I'd gone back to work and before I left, obviously, in one foul swoop, I had 2 black eyes, a bloody nose, and a split lip.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
So, you know, but they all healed up.
Yes.
It's what goes on in here.
Yeah.
I remember
It's
saying to my
what-
ex-husband once, I remember saying to my husband, after he had, I can't remember what it was he said or whatever, but I remember saying to him, God, I wish you'd hit me in the head with a frying pan rather than say that. You know, because to use your tongue, if you like, as a knife wounds our spirit in the way that a knife wound, a real knife wound, would heal.
Yeah.
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 I think the other difficulty is a lot of women, and I only have experience with women, so I'll just use that, but I think it's the same for men. But, you know, a lot of these narcissists are very good at playing the victim as well.
Yeah.
And if we begin to
Yeah.
rise up and to stand up for ourselves and to say, oh, this isn't working, I think I'm going to have to leave. Oh my God, they can turn on the waterworks. They can talk about their horrible childhood. They can talk about nobody loves me, no one's ever liked me. Oh God, the memories of that. And so you then feel you must take on the role of rescuer.
Yes.
And I can't leave this poor bloke or this woman because she'll fall apart without me.
Yep.
And there's this double abuse to where not only are you being treated badly, as in verbally abused, but you're also now being put in the position of, I can't ever leave because this person will kill themselves. How will I live with myself?
Yeah.
And my advice to you then is get the F out.
Well,
Yes,
absolutely.
please.
My ex-husband's still alive, still being a bastard.
I mean, it's essentially it's emotional blackmail, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Essentially, without being obviously emotional blackmail. We've got we've got a question in in the comments here. Karen is asking, she's saying, I know what I need to do intellectually after being ghosted after almost 4 weeks by my ex-boyfriend, in brackets, terrible relationship. And my mum, sister and brother-in-law had COVID during that time. But he was so selfish that he didn't care to think about what I was going through. Among everything else he put me throughout our relationship. How do I truly move on now? She's also saying, I've been through physical abuse in my past, but my latest narcissist relationship with the emotional and mental abuse was the absolute worst. Many times I would rather be hit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just what Karen's just been saying. That you would rather be hit with a frying pan than the words, because obviously it's the emotional and mental abuse that obviously digs deeper. And that's the hardest thing to overcome, because obviously if you're stabbed, it can heal. You know, I mean, obviously if it doesn't kill you, you will heal. Bruises will fade. Scars, fair enough, they're there, but scars can also serve a purpose to remind you that I've been there, I've hit rock bottom, but look where I am now, and be proud of yourself because of it.
Oh,
can I ask, sorry, what was her name again?
Karen.
Oh, Karen Baddy. And
hi.
She said you rocks on another comment I've seen.
Yeah.
What exactly does ghosted mean? I'm afraid that's not a term I've come across before.
When they absolutely blank you. Yeah.
Right.
When they absolutely blank you and they block you on social media, delete your number, or block your number, then they just completely ignore you. And it's like,
in other words, sorry, you don't get the opportunity for real closure or to talk through the relationship or whatever.
Yeah.
How should she move on? How should you move on? Well, the first thing I would say is
block him on everything.
Sorry, my cat is sitting here complaining because he can't go out because he's hurt his eye and he hates it. Sorry, so if you hear me meowing, it's not me. You know what, Karen, I would say
absolutely block him.
Well,
ghost
even
him.
beyond that, even,
Yeah.
realize it's over, which is very sad. Well, not sad. He deserved for it to be over. And also recognize that any further contact with him is not going to make you feel better about yourself or the end of the relationship, even if you ended it, and you got his anger as a result of your ending it. He is not in the business, sorry to say, of making you feel any better. And so any further contact with him would not be closure. It would leave you with more questions and more personal angst. But if you can afford it, and unfortunately, it does cost money to see a therapist or a counsellor, unless you go to some charitable organisation, I would seek out good professional help. And I'm not saying that means you're bonkers. It doesn't mean you're bonkers. I myself work with people, and most of them are not bonkers at all. Most of them are people who have at some point in their life been traumatized or mistreated. And in the same way we would take a car to a garage that's had a bang up so we could fix it and get it back to a good running, in the same way we need to take ourselves to see somebody who can help us recover from being banged up by another person. I would seek out good help.
Absolutely. It's and you're so right, Karen. There's nothing wrong with us. We're not ill.
No.
It's I think this is where some people can. This is where some people can be misunderstood, and like you said, with seeking that help, whether it be counselling or with a good therapist, and just because that person has the title of therapist doesn't mean that, as you say, that there is actually something wrong with the patient, the client.
No.
Yeah.
I think it's called therapy because it is therapeutic. It's helpful. It's useful. It helps us feel better. And it is all about working. Everything is about working with our unconscious minds or subconscious minds, however you want to refer to it as, because that's where all our memories are stored. That's where every experience we've had, anything that's related to that experience, is stored in that memory, in the unconscious mind.
Yes.
So that and our unconscious mind is there to protect us as well. It looks after us. So instantly, as soon as we perhaps find somebody else that we're remotely attracted to and perhaps would like to become involved in a relationship, there is that, as you said, Karen, you kind of, all of a sudden you're standing outside of yourself and going, can I really trust them?
Yeah.
So, and it's almost like which is almost a surreal moment, isn't it? Almost a very surreal feeling.
But again, it's that traumatic flight, fight, freeze response, which is trying to protect us. And yet at the same time, it's unpleasant because it's a defense that we're looking out of a very small hole in the castle we're living in,
That's it. I was going to say, we've built this enormous fortress around us that's God knows how many feet thick. I did exactly the same thing. I actually did that, and it wasn't until recently that I realised that whilst I thought I'd moved on really well from all of that, and I had moved on really well, I hadn't allowed myself to move forward, to trust other people enough to allow myself to be vulnerable again. Really.
I think what I would say, I'll just truly move on, would be block, obviously, him, block his phone number, block him on all social media, try and cut out as much contact as you can so physically he's not in your life anymore. If you used to live with him, maybe decorate the house if you can, make it more cozier for you, make it homey for you. So then all those bad memories are out of your life. And then if you've got any pictures, obviously get rid of them. But then obviously, do see the therapist as well, because they'll help you in here. But then physically, you can do all the little things to help you, and spend more time with family, friends, and they will help you actually get through, because having that support network around you will help you massively.
There's a lot of thought now in the therapy world, where you don't say to someone what's wrong with you. You say what happened to you.
Yeah.
Because most people that seek out counselling is because someone has done something, or there has been an external event that has caused us to not feel safe, either physically or within ourselves.
Yeah.
And regaining that sense of I'm okay, I'm safe, is a real journey. But even small steps begin taking you there. So take some small steps.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I would say that the day that I moved from one end of the country to the other was 5 days before I was due to have my first psychotherapy appointment following the nervous breakdown. And I'd been informed of that appointment 6 months prior to the appointment.
Oh.
Right? Yeah.
Right.
So I never had any psychotherapy. I literally went, my own training that I've undergone with NLP and coaching and hypnotherapy and timeline therapy has helped me massively. And as I say, I didn't realise until it came to the point of going through my master practitioner training that I hadn't allowed myself to let down that fortress of a barrier to allow other people in. And that was all to do with the trust, you know.
Yeah.
I felt I was safe. I was fine. I was happy. I thought, you know, everything's going wonderfully and, you know, my life's brilliant. And yeah. But as soon as I closed my eyes in this one particular section, all I saw was this big, thick fortress wall all around me.
Yeah.
And it was like, wow, really? So, I mean, I have absolutely nothing against counselling and psychotherapy. What I will say is that it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
I did have some counselling a long time ago, way before all of the crap that happened. But for me to sit and pick through a significant emotional event and pull it apart and then analyse every tiny little part of it is not my idea of fun.
Yeah.
And
So you see, we're all different, because for me, it saved my life, but not the nitpicky little, it didn't, I mean, it wasn't sort of like, you know, picking out a needle in a haystack. It was more generalized, but it was finally getting that understanding of why I felt as I did, which was more related to my childhood, to be fair, than my marriage. But as you say, Kerry B, it's not for, you know, it's different things for different folks. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, you know, I mean, I always follow that up with, you know, there are many wonderful counsellors and psychotherapists out there who do an amazing job for so many different people.
Yeah.
And they are there for the people that will benefit from their services, from their help. I'm one of those people that I prefer to look at something and understand why it happened, but also understand why I'm not there anymore. And to accept the fact that, and this might sound a bit strange to people, but I believe that we are responsible for what happens in our lives. Now, I didn't go and ask to be in an abusive relationship. I didn't ask for the abusive bit at all. You know, that kind of happened. It came out of the blue.
Yeah.
But I did choose to stay there. Even after it all started happening, I chose to stay. So I chose to be in that environment for a long time. But equally, I then chose to leave.
Yeah.
When I chose to leave, when I'd made up my mind that I was leaving, even before I knew how or when it was going to happen or where I would go, I felt a lot better because I'd got a definite plan set up in my head and I felt so much better.
Yeah.
And since moving away from that, I've been able to look at it pretty objectively. You know, I've forgiven it. I've let go of that past period of time, that past relationship.
Wouldn't you say that, Kerry? Sorry, do you mind if I?
Yeah, cool.
I agree with you. I had to come. When I first heard we are responsible for what happens to us,
yeah,
I was like, don't you dare tell me that. How can I live with that? But I know where they're coming from. Yeah. At the same time, when you are in a relationship that is abusive, it causes a very distorted perspective in your brain of yourself, of the circumstances, and you don't have the clarity of thought required until the last straw is laid on you to say, I don't think this person's very good for me. I think I'll walk away, because it's all muddled up with their, deceit, their distorting of how things are. Eventually you have an awakening.
Yes.
And then you realize, okay, I chose to stay, but my choices were so badly informed by the situation I was in. I'm not going to, because when I heard them say, you're responsible for what you go through, that made me feel like I didn't have the right to, or that I should actually, blame myself. But it's not about blaming yourself, is it? It's just about recognizing that as we go through life, choices we make aren't always well informed, but we've made them.
That's it. Yeah, it's owning those decisions that we've made for ourselves, isn't it? So owning the fact that we chose to stay.
But you don't have to feel guilty about it.
No,
because it wasn't. It was.
No.
I don't want Karen or other people listening to think, "Oh gosh, did I choose this?" No, you didn't.
No.
You chose the nice person who then
it.
turned out to, locked you in a cage, as it were.
Absolutely, absolutely. We, as I say, I chose to stay. We all choose to stay until we get to a point where we choose to leave.
Yeah.
And it's not. I don't think it's about laying blame either. I don't think that even we should blame ourselves for it.
No.
Accept and own the fact that we made those decisions because they were our decisions. Nobody forced us to stay there.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is that you can actually leave at any time.
Even it's the fear of the unknown, isn't it? You're staying because you're scared of, oh, I'm going to leave and I'm not going to have enough money. I'm not going to have any support. But just do it.
Where am I going to live? How am I going to get money? And what am I supposed to do with this? And what am I supposed to do with that? And blah, blah, blah. Do you know what? It doesn't matter.
You're constantly overthinking everything,
There will always be somewhere to go. Yeah. There will always be a way of making some, earning some money. But it's so important that we don't blame ourselves.
Yes.
Because if we start blaming ourselves, then we're on a slippery slope downwards.
Yes.
Rather than being able to stay on a level for time until we can start moving upwards.
Yes, because the other part of not leaving, like, Kerry and you were both saying quite rightly, it's about, oh my God, how do I survive physically? I know in my relationship and in many abusive relationships, we are told you won't survive without me. You're nothing. You're stupid. You're pathetic. No one will ever love you. You'll never be able to look after yourself. And so they disempower us.
Yeah.
And so moving out is almost like, jumping down a empty lift cavity, and so my biggest piece of advice as well is start telling somebody what's really going on in your marriage or your relationship, somebody you can trust that will believe you, because quite often these people put on beautiful public faces, beautiful public personas. Nobody believed me when I first began to tell people what he was like behind closed doors, and that's very disempowering. But to find somebody that will begin to believe you and begin to help you make a plan, believing,
definitely,
and you find that when you do come out of that relationship and obviously move away and start rebuilding your life, you'll find that people will respect you more because they know just how strong you are to come from that sort of relationship where you basically near enough hit rock bottom to rebuild yourself. It takes a lot of strength and courage to do that, and people will respect you for having that strength.
Definitely, absolutely. We could talk about this all night, I believe. I know, and as much as I would love to, perhaps we'll come back and do another one. But on that note, last thought for the evening, for the session from you, Karen, first of all.
Last thought.
Yes, or a little message for anybody, anyone that's listening.
All I'll say is, when I left my relationship, and I left because I was broken. I didn't make this wonderful warrior, Xena warrior princess statement of, I have realized, this is my sword, I have realized I deserve better and I'm moving on with my life. No, I know now I come across as a strong person, but I was totally disempowered. I was broken. And when I left and was back home with my parents, I thought I would never know how to live again, piece myself back together and have a life I enjoyed. And if I have managed to do that, because I'm very happy, then you can.
Definitely. Thank you for that, Karen. How about you, Kerry? Last thought for the evening?
If you're in an abusive relationship, it's not your fault. You deserve better.
Yeah.
And it's going to take a lot of strength and a lot of courage. There's going to be the fear of the unknown, but go for it. Take that leap of faith, because on the other side, life is so much better away from that abuser.
Yeah.
And we can all sit here and say, yeah, it was difficult. Yeah, we hit rock bottom, but we're so much better without them now. We're warriors.
Absolutely, we certainly are. Yes, and I think just to echo what you've both said, really, and just to let people know, you're not alone. You're absolutely not alone.
There'll always be someone out there ready to listen and ready to help.
Absolutely. And if you're watching this and you need to reach out for some help, please do. Either drop us a message in the comments or find us on Facebook and drop one of us a private message.
Yeah.
We'll always help. Thank you, guys. Yeah. What an absolutely amazing evening this evening. And let's arrange to do another one sometime.
I think so. Yes.
Yeah, and can I just say, Steve Knapp's on tomorrow night with Camille on. Adam's commented, so we better say that. Otherwise, he'll shout to us.
They shout at you. That's domestic violence.
I tell him shut up.
Right. On that note, thank you everybody for tuning in and watching us this evening. If you haven't already, click subscribe and hit the like button. And as I say, if you need to, do get in touch. Find us on Facebook, send us a private message, whatever you need to do. Stay safe, everybody, and we'll see you very soon.
Bye.